in prison and $500,000 in fines. The Treasury Department projecting government borrowing of $947 billion in the third quarter. That would be a new record, but down from the all-time high of $2.75 trillion in this year's second quarter. The Treasury Department says the government also plans to borrow $1.2 trillion during the fourth quarter of this year. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
The head of the U.S. Postal Service being summoned to Capitol Hill to answer complaints about the mail.
Democrats on the House Oversight Committee say they've been hearing complaints from constituents about mail delivered late. So they've invited the new Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, to testify September 17th. To save money, DeJoy cut overtime, and postal workers have been told to leave mail at distribution centers until the next day if they can't get to it. But those delays may be a sore spot for November's election, when mail-in balloting is expected to expand because of the pandemic. The Postmaster General has been a Trump donor, and the president's been warning about fraud connected to mail-in ballots. In Washington, Joel Nato, Fox News.
State lawmakers in Nevada have approved, and Governor Steve Sisolak has signed a bill to send out millions of unrequested mail-in ballots. President Trump considering a lawsuit to try and stop that distribution. Talks resume Tuesday to try and hammer out another compromised coronavirus relief package. The largest sticking point, apparently, the resumption of federal supplemental unemployment benefits. Both sides agree that should happen, but they are far apart on how much those payments should be. There's a new owner for a troubled football league.
Buzz teaming up with his Pittsburgh Capital to buy the XFL Football League for $15 million. One tweets, if there's anyone who knows how to bring entertainment value to live sports and entertainment, it's The Rock. Many comparing reality to Johnson's character, Spencer, in the HBO series Ballers.
I'm going to do it my way.
I'd expect nothing less.
Which was a former NFL player setting out to become a financial manager. The XFL filing for bankruptcy in April. Johnson tweeting he is excited to create something special for the fans.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin, and I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
We have lunch selection starting at $9. Choose from a variety of mouthwatering entrees like our Old Timer with cheese, ranchero chicken tacos, or the half-rack baby back ribs. All lunch selections are served with a refreshing bottomless Coca-Cola beverage. Experience the bold flavors at a great price with Chili's lunch selection starting at $9. Available Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Located in the Tumon Sands Plaza, second floor. Chili's, savor the moment.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales is also brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And along the same lines, the right of the people to listen to and pay attention to tall tales really ought not to be infringed. It's the greatest source of wisdom, political commentary, constitutional explication, and unlimited displays of personal modesty that you'll find anywhere in this part of the world. And I don't mind saying so myself. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
I thought you'd agree with me.
Of course.
Yeah. Where's your sidekick, Real Joe Cruz?
He's on an intermittent training program, so he'll be here tomorrow.
Okay. All right, let's go straight to Zemi Ikotny. Okay, well, today the Daily News, as per its ordinary custom, is not running a local editorial. They're running some boilerplate from USA Today. Today it's a special writer, Tony Mauro, M-A-U-R-O, who's a very well-established legal commentator, ordinarily writes some pretty good stuff. And today what he's saying is that the United States needs a Bill of Rights monument. And I think that's probably a good idea. I'm not going to go into the editorial, but I've seen statuary of the Ten Commandments outside of churches from time to time. They make pretty nice, it makes a pretty nice piece. And there was a time when Judge, what was his name from Alabama, the Chief Justice of in Alabama, his name will come to me in a minute. He also ran for the Senate, had a monument of the 10-ton monument of the 10 Commandments installed in the Supreme Court building. I think it was Alabama. And some busybodies made him remove it. But same principle as the Bill of Rights, you know, the first through 10 amendments to the Constitution. Since we're so intent on what monuments stand for nowadays, that would seem to fit in nicely. I hope it's successful. And we have the Post, and this is what the Post says. Should students be tested for Wuhan virus before schools reopen? Now, of course, they're not using the right language here, the right vocabulary. They're using COVID. How do you pronounce that, Real Joe Cruz?
Wuhan, sir.
Yeah, COVID, pronounced Wuhan. The spelling is really tricky. That's the correct name for this virus that's been raising so much problems with us. On Tall Tales, it's called the Wuhan virus. We don't horse around with any of this COVID or COVID-19. The custom on Tall Tales is that if it has a handle and a pointed blade and it's used for digging holes, we call it a spade. We don't call it a hand-operated entrenching tool, although that's certainly much more politically correct. So this is what the Post says today. Many parents and guardians can attest that the elementary to high school students and their homes are itching to go back to school. Now, it's a strange world we live in. When kids are still in summer vacation, you're saying, "Oh, I wish we could go back to school." Next thing, they're going to ask for more broccoli and spinach at dinner table, right? Yeah. After being cooped up for months, deprived of campus learning and mingling with classmates since last quarter of the prior school year, a socially distant summer, thanks to Wuhan virus restrictions, thousands of students have opted to go back to physical campuses. That's another interesting fact about where we are today. Physical campuses. Is there any other kind? A metaphorical campus? A psychic campus? Yeah, I know this guy over here is saying, the guy in the lazy boy that knows all the answers, he's saying, yeah, a digital campus, Bob. Well, it's just not the same thing. For certain grade levels, some families have concluded there is no real substitute for going back to actual classroom learning. The American Association of Pediatricians, in a statement on the reopening of schools during the pandemic, stated, quote, pediatricians, parents, and educators all share the same goal of wanting children to go back in the classroom as much as possible. But we must do so in a way that's safe and feasible. The AAP strongly advocates that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with a goal of having students physically present in school. Yeah, you know, I look back on my own school years. I suspect you do too, right, Real Joe Cruz?
I do, sir.
What was that, 3 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you know, your school days for an awful lot of kids are, you know, memory treasures of memory. All of the good things that happen in school, all of the memories that you still get out and play with, like kids playing with their old toys. There's no substitute for it. But are Guam schools truly ready? Well, a lot of years, even when we don't have the Wuhan virus, they're not truly ready. Can our schools open physical campus this month without putting the health of teachers, school staff, and students at greater risk of getting sick from Wuhan virus than learning and teaching at home? Some of Guam's private schools have already begun to open. Guam Public Schools will open in 2 weeks from now on August 17 with temperature checks and social distancing. While nearly 70% of nearly 29,000 GDOE students have opted in-home learning, GDO students have opted in home learning, there will still be lots of students who will be in physical classrooms in 2 weeks. Many schools have done a good job of letting their students' families understand the precautions that will be taken on campus and in classrooms. Masks and social distancing rules will be the new norm. Social distancing, this kind of ties into Jim Moylan's bill. You know, his hate crimes bill. Do you remember the identity group that I've criticized Jim Moylan on? I've roundly criticized Jim Moylan on for leaving them out. What group was that, Real Joe Cruz?
The woke.
No, he's got the wokes.
Oh, the nerds?
The nerds.
Nerds.
So the nerds have finally come into their own. Social distancing. No one would get within 6 feet of a nerd, even if there weren't any Wuhan virus around. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
True, sir.
Yeah. Life and times of the nerds. Many schools have done a good job of letting their families understand the precautions that will be taken on campus. Without trying to diminish the ongoing efforts of schools, the school board, principal, superintendent, and parent-teacher organizations, are we as a community comfortable sending our students back to school? Have we as a community done enough to ensure our schools are safe? Should Wuhan virus testing be required before students get accepted into the school year, the same way schools require certain vaccinations as part of the school physical? Should teachers and school staff be required to get Wuhan virus testing before school starts? If school is going to start soon, they need to do some testing on kids, stated Jonia resident Greg Kitaro, who really knows a lot about this stuff, who wondered in a recent story in the Post if the current measures are enough. It's unclear if testing more than 10,000 kids before they head back to school is realistic, but testing all school staff and faculty is at very least a good start. We know 22,205 Wuhan virus tests have been conducted on the island over the past 4 months, so testing all school children will be a challenge, but should not be dismissed as impossible. It's worth considering. I don't know, Daily Post. It's not Blue Star material again today. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go to the card. You know, I had something on yesterday's card that I never got to, and I forgot to put it on today's card, so maybe I'll just bring it up. Yesterday, Nigapne Eleknisi Re Guaha bureaucratic constipation. So, Ufeishana Yasagua Haftamanamasangan bureaucratic constipation gifinut tomorrow. Eleknia Yasagua no Sistemon Gubietno Kanilak. Ike Lachidu Sistemon Gubietno Penexu. Yeah. So, Sistemon Gobierno Penexo. So, no Penexo pat Kanilak. Sistemon Gobierno Kanilak. Sometimes we don't get enough from our bureaucracy. Sometimes we get way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the product is always the same.
Oh, man. I've never heard that word so much on the radio.
Uh-huh. All right. So, moving right along from Sistemon Gobierno Penexo to the rest of the card, which perhaps isn't as much fun, we go to... we start out with Troy versus Janela, and Janela is up to 76 days. It's been 76 days since Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco, issued her pronouncement that Janela was not required to apologize, Carlo Branch's apology being sufficient. However, Crystal said there will be no more Janela-ing of reporters in the future. Janela-ing meaning, the verb to Janela means to mute or silence, especially a reporter. So it's been 76 days, and we haven't caught Janela-ing anybody in that 76 days. And we have Tina. Tina's up to 29 days here. Yeah, she's up to 29 days. It's been 29 days since Tina detected something that was dangerous to the public health, as you were to the public health or safety of the people of Guam, of such a degree that she would have to call the legislature in the special session and waive the requirement for public hearings for bills to come before that special session. Tina does this a lot. And the last 2 times she did it, her special session was adjourned on the motion of Joe San Augustine so he could hold a public hearing on the bills for which Tina had waived the requirement. But Tina has gone on to bigger and better things now. I have a story from PNC Guam. And you prepare Real Joe Cruz to feel really good, okay? Prepare for a wave of optimism to sweep over you. Guam inducted into UNPO at the 25th General Assembly. What did I tell you? Yeah. On Friday, July 31, Guam joined 4 other members to be welcomed to the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization at the 25th General Assembly. Way to go, Tina. Earlier this term, Speaker Munya Barnes had introduced and passed Resolution 255-35 relative to supporting Guam's application for membership in the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. In April 2020, the UNPO presidency members have made the decision to accept Guam as a new member of UNPO. Round of applause, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. According to the UNPO covenant, new organizations are voted in as members at the UNPO General Assembly. Originally, the General Assembly was scheduled to take place in Washington, D.C. between 31st July and 2nd August of 2020. However, due to the Wuhan virus, the General Assembly is now held virtually. Did Tina go anyhow? Probably didn't tell Tina. Since the last General Assembly, the UNPO presidency has recommended the induction of 5 new UNPO members. The government of Guam, here's one that'll make Frenchie happy, the Catalan National Assembly, the Yoruba World Congress, and the Movement for the Actualization of the State of Biafra / Biafra Independence Movement. So we're right up there with the big guys, the Biafra Independence Movement. Wow. Oh, and then one more. And the Movement for the Survival of the River Races in Zambezia. Boy, Tina really knows how to pick them, doesn't she? Bringing the total number of active members of the UNPO up to 44, representing over 300 million in some of the most well-known present and historical issues around decolonization, indigenous rights, and self-determination. Each new member was given the opportunity, they're woke here, given the opportunity to introduce themselves. So let me go back here and examine this list here. Oh yeah, the state of the state of Siam, including Siamese twins. Yeah, I'm sorry, conjoined twins. Yeah, each new member was given the opportunity to introduce themselves to the wider membership, express their firm commitment to the values and rules contained within the UNPO covenant. Now, I wonder what rules are contained in that covenant that Tina Rose committed herself to, and why they've applied for UNPO membership. These new members were formally inducted into the UNPO at the conclusion of this session. And then here's a statement from Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Can I have some of that dramatic music, Real Joe Cruz? When faced with tribulation, we must keep on. We must keep on trying. leaving no stone unturned. Over the last couple months, after receiving letters regarding the Guam buildup and listening to the concerns of our community, it's apparent that we must keep on trying to get our voices heard. I forgot my Kleenex at home. I really wish I had it. So touching, Tina. The organization charges a membership fee of about $3,000. What a bargain. Only $3,000. Barnes' office stated UNPO hasn't billed GovGuam for membership. Well, that's encouraging. UNPO hasn't charged us as they understand the budgetary constraints we're facing.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, we have these budgetary concerns. We don't have as much money to waste as we've had in some years. We'd like to waste $3,000 with you, but I hope you understand. UNPO has put together a working group with international experts on a campaign regarding, quote, reimagining self-determination, the Speaker's office stated. Got another article here. Yeah, an article from the Post. It's about the same thing. So we've joined this organization of the, let's see, what's it called again? Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organizations. So, Guam, let's assume we can apply the word. Do we require, as it were, do we assume that Guam is a nation? You know, nation, the word nation is not synonymous with state. So you could have a nation that's not a state, and you could have a state that has more than one nation. So let's assume that Guam is a nation, and let's assume that we're unrepresented. Now, of these countries like the Yoruba World Congress, the movement for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, would they have someone in a body that's analogous to the House of Representatives of the United States like we do? I wonder if Michael San Nicolas and Robert Underwood realize that they are holding office in an unrepresented state. I have a feeling they might not think that's exactly correct. But leave it to Tina. You know, she's out there looking for opportunities, and I'm sure there's a junket in there somewhere. And it only cost us $3,000. So it's one more step towards separatism. So I will, before the election, before the general election, I will go through the candidates and I will put an S beside all of the separatists. And people, of course, are free to vote whoever they want to vote for. It is, in fact, a free country. But I can tell you this, I will not vote for a separatist. I don't want to live in an independent Guam. I want to continue to live in a territory of Guam that's closely affiliated with the United States of America. And I want to take a break right now.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hakatia and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
I'm going to move on to the next item on the card, which is titled The Woke versus Us. But first, I want to answer a question that is posed on Facebook here by Don A. Ed Kilani. And after that, I'm going to... Our Carl is early today, isn't he?
He is, sir.
Yeah. And then I'll go to our Carl, who James Howard says is the most dangerous man in the room.
This is true, sir.
So, for those who haven't seen our Carl, I'll give you a physical description of him. We don't see very many people wearing trench coats here on the island. But imagine this person wearing a trench coat and a snap brim hat. Pulled down over his eyes, walking very upright and very purposefully. I don't want to make any comparisons with James Bond, but I think you get what I mean here. Our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. Okay, here's Don Ed Kalani's question. Should we be so hard on Janella? Do you require her to apologize? Well, I guess it's been a while since I went into the background here. But here's what happened, Don. The governor had a press conference at one of these virtual press conferences, and the governor, Janella, had issued the command that only questions related to the Wuhan virus would be answered. And this is when everybody wanted to talk about the 19th floor and some of the other things that were going on. So Janella had command of the, what's the name of that software? I always forget.
Zoom, sir.
Yeah, Zoom. Janella had command of Zoom. So when she uses the Zoom, she recognized a reporter, and the reporter started to ask a question about something other than the Wuhan virus. Janella muted her by pushing the button. So for a while, she was Janella the hitman. And then later on, she would release the button, and the reporter said, I was muted. And Janella said, well, I told you, you had to confine your questions to the Wuhan virus. This happened a couple times, and then a reporter started to ask a question, and Janella interrupted and says, you can't remember? I told you, you can't ask that question. So it was pretty contentious, and I would just add parenthetically here, if you were a politician, you kind of got to stay on the right side of reporters. The old saying is, never fight with a person who buys his newsprint by the carload and his ink by the barrel. And the corollary is never fight with the media, never fight with the media. Because fighting with the media is like wrestling with a pig. You get all dirty and the pig loves it. So that's basically what happened. So the very next day, the lieutenant governor came along and said, I really apologize. That was a terrible performance yesterday. I apologize. And Janela Carrera and Carlo Branch should apologize too. I want them to apologize. So a couple days after that, Carlo Branch came along with kind of an oblique apology, but no apology from Janela. So then Troy got on Janela, actually on the lieutenant governor, said, hey, Lieutenant Governor, Janela hasn't apologized. And this went on for about 3 weeks. Is Janela a free agent? She doesn't have to do what you tell her to do. Is she going to apologize? On and on and on. Maybe even longer than 3 weeks. And then finally, Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco, who is the governor's spokesperson, came along. Yeah, that's, I had plastic surgery yesterday.
I'm just checking because it looks like it's bleeding a little bit. Just wanted to let you know.
Don't worry, I won't bleed on the camera. Yeah, I started out, I was going to have plastic surgery.
Yes, sir.
And the surgeon got about that far and said, no, it's hopeless.
I assume you were shaving with your K-bar again and you had a little slip.
That'll happen too. So sorry, Don, for interrupting here. I'm sorry that the real Joe Cruz interrupted to talk about one of my personal problems. I'd tell him that he should apologize, but he'd probably be about as obedient as Janela. And even if he did, he'd Janela the mic. Yeah. So Troy was kept asking the lieutenant governor over and over again until finally Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco, issued this statement who said that it's not necessary for Janela to apologize because Carlo Branch was the one who ordered her to Janela, and therefore it's not necessary for Janela to apologize. But then she said, but we can assure you that things like that will never happen again. So I'm just keeping watch. You know, Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. I'm just keeping watch to make sure there isn't any more Janela-ing. And I'm keeping a count, and it's been 76 days, and Janela hasn't Janela'd anybody. So you think that's too hard, Don? Let me know. Okay, so much for Janela. Our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Wow, I didn't realize that James Howard said that. I've had people say that. I know just enough about some things to be dangerous.
The most dangerous.
Yeah, one of my friends actually told me, he said, Carl, you have a mind like a steel sieve.
Like a steel sieve. That's good, our Carl.
Yeah, I was complimented.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my 2 bits about the, the race for our representative in Congress. Robert Underwood's motto is, "Are you ready?" And I would modify that, if I could, to be, "Are you ready to separate from America?"
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty honest slogan, because like you said, he's pretty much the godfather of the separatist movement, and putting him back in Congress would put him, I think, in a position where he could work on pushing forward legislation to advance that position. And the irony is that 95% of the island is not interested in that, in separating with America. Over the course of many, many months, I was curious, and I surveyed other Chamorros, asking them what their position was on political status. Just honestly curious, to see if there was this groundswell of Chamorros who were interested in it. And I'd say roughly, if I was to estimate, about 80 to 85%, something like that, didn't really have any big problems with our present status. They thought it should be improved. We need to work on it, make it better. Maybe 10% roughly were interested in statehood, 10 to maybe 20%. I found one person interested in free association, and I told him that. I said, "You're the only person in all the people I've surveyed in this random unofficial survey that is actually interested in free association." I was really quite shocked when he came out for that. But anyway, yeah. So, are you ready to separate from America? I think that would be a pretty good, honest slogan if I could modify that.
Okay. Well, interesting sentiment. Perhaps Robert will modify his campaign propaganda. My bad. Materials.
I have a feeling maybe not, but that would be my suggestion anyway. Anyway, Bob, thank you for allowing me to chime in. I appreciate it.
Okay. So that's our Carl, the most dangerous man. And we need to have some theme music for our Carl. Something like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or something like that, huh? Yeah. As he turns up the collar on his trench coat, pulls his snap brim hat down a little more closer over his eyes, and climbs into his Bentley and roars away. Okay, next item on the card, the woke versus the U.S. And I had somebody call here, I think it was Jim Moylan, called and said, woke, what does that mean, woke? Telling us, of course, that either he is not woke or even worse, he's trying to pass. Just a deception plan. Woke? Oh, I don't know. What is that woke? What does that mean? Anyhow, so the whole idea of the woke and what's going on in the United States right now is an extremely serious threat to our country. So I'm going to spend a little time on this today. I've got a piece here that's a little bit on the long side, but very pertinent that I'm going to read into the record. It's the woke versus us. Wokeness has become the nomenclature for the ideology of or mentality of radical leftist activists on college campuses. Shouldn't that be campi? Plural of campus would be.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
All right. I bet it was once upon a time. College campuses at protests and on social media. But wokeness has not been limited to just a handful of activists. It's become a dominant mindset in the American workplace, in both the public and private sectors, as a method to promote, quote, anti-racism. A Heritage Foundation panel on July 24 addressed first what wokeness really actually is, but also how it has crept into corporate boardrooms and why it's such a problem. Angela Saylor, vice president of the Fuellner Institute at Heritage Foundation, said that pervasive trends under the guise of equality, guise, you know the word guise?
Yes, sir.
It's part of the word disguise, right?
More than two men, more than three men.
That's about as good as when I asked you if you knew what a dormer was.
Yes, sir.
You said, yeah, somebody who lives in a dorm. You ought to put together your own dictionary, Real Joe Cruz.
I should, sir.
This is Guise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah. You had a good one. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Pervasive trends under the guise of equality makes diversity training in government and corporate America and schools destructive, divisive, and harmful. How are socialists deluding a whole generation? James Lindsay, the co-author of a forthcoming book, Cynical Theories, How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and Why This Harms Everyone, says wokeness is actually a combination of many different ideas. Wokeness is a fusion of the critical theory school of neo-Marxism. Now, you've heard that term on this program before, which is a form of identity politics and radical activism that has a very particular worldview that separates the world into liberationists, oppressors, or oppressed versus oppressors, said Lindsay, whose book set for release. It marries that, Lindsay said, with postmodern theory, which holds that all applications of truth are actually applications of politics by other means. In other words, the truth is malleable based on power and who drives the narrative of what truth really is. In effect, the truth is replaced by my truth. Marxism is a mostly economic theory with origins in the 19th century. Those ideas, he said, led to some of the worst atrocities in world history. Traditional Marxist ideas were adopted but changed in the 1920s by Italian communist Antonio Gramsci and others, and became the project of the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. That new theory focused more on shaping culture, Lindsay said, marrying traditional Marxism with Freudian psychology and other social theories to change the way people think. The goal of postmodernists who were part of that movement was to deconstruct the very meanings of things. Deconstruct the very meanings of things. Therefore, when I refer to the person sitting in the control room here at the Point who has an X and a Y chromosome in his genetic makeup, I can't refer to him as he. I have to refer to him as they. That's a very small example of deconstruct the very meaning of things. Those ideas reached a new phase with the writings of Herbert Marcuse. And I've mentioned him before. Back in the 60s, radical college kids had the 3 M's, Marx, Mao, Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse, a Columbia University professor in the 60s and 70s, who advocated radical activism based on identity politics. But this radicalism burned out, Lindsay said, because its violence ultimately made it unpopular. The radicalism burned out, as you were. The radicals then left the streets and embedded themselves in our schools and universities. It has all the conflict theory. Separate the world into oppressor versus oppressed classes with zero-sum conflict. No ability to agree or understand one another across those, and then takes on the postmodern understanding of truth being just politics by other means, which removes all the brakes standing up against it, Lindsay said. Seeing the world through that lens is what constitutes wokeness. Mike Gonzalez, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, author of a new book, The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free, explained how these ideas entered the workplace under the guise of combating racism and why they are so toxic. Anti-racism training is a con, Gonzalez said. These consultants are paid exorbitant amounts of money. Often these fees come from taxpayer funds. Though many of the advocates of wokeness are con artists, we have to take them seriously, Gonzalez said, because there is a strong ideological component to it. The true name of anti-racism training is consciousness-raising struggle sessions. It's used to demolish the, quote, hegemonic narrative, which in similar terms, Gonzalez said, is simply the American story, the American dream. Now I'm going to come back to the woke versus us here in a minute.
$5 $5 They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They're open in Hagåtña and they're ready for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them at 479-2652 and get your Mezcla fix today.
The world from 1850 to the present. Christopher Rufo, the director of the Center on Wealth and Poverty at Seattle-based Discovery Institute and contributing editor at City Journal, has delved into how anti-racist training, together with Black Lives Matter movement, has invaded the boardroom and government. This is now becoming the default ideology of the bureaucracy. System gobyerno. Penexu Patkanilek. And people are making, in some cases, millions of dollars offering essentially political indoctrination on the public dime to public employees. All levels of government, as well as nonprofits and corporations, now have human resources department that have adopted critical race theory as their dominant functioning ideology, adding that it's becoming a particularly big problem at the federal level. You have an apparatus of federal power that has grown extraordinarily since the days of Woodrow Wilson through Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson, in this kind of permanently expanding power that until recently, at least theoretically, operated under the ostensible ideology of the social sciences of neutrality. But it's really been abandoned, Rufo said. The permanent bureaucracy, no matter who is president, has adopted critical race theory as its ideology of choice. That's leading to a change in regime that has never been voted on or approved by the American people. The result is that the machinery of bureaucracy will be weaponized against the American people. Rufo spoke of ways to stop this form of regime change. He said it's important to create institutional infrastructure to protect people from being targeted and, quote, canceled. Gonzalez said it's essential to inform other Americans of the transformation taking place and warn them of the radical changes to come if these ideas are not stopped. The more we write about this, the more we expose people to what has taken place, to why, who did it, and how they did it, and what is their real goal. We can start to demolish this idea that, no, this is not nice because people need justice, Gonzalez said, adding, let's really be honest and without rancor in our hearts, just expose them. Sunshine can be a great disinfectant. Let's allow light in and expose this for what it is. And it's another explanation of what's going on in the mainland. The riots in Portland have absolutely nothing to do with George Floyd. The rioting, the arson, etc., this wokeness as described in this piece that I just read, it's neo-Marxism. It's, in fact, an attempt at regime change, changing our whole government, and it's a serious problem. I see some of the separatist advocates here on Guam as being provenders of that same woke attitude. I think I couldn't give you a better example than the video that I played the other day of one of the separatists having a chat, a friendly chat with a gentleman named Paul Zerzan. I think you all remember that. He's a colonizer. He's a killer. Okay, so the concentration here on Tall Tales is on local politics. I think it's really important, though, that we all have an understanding of what's going on in the mainland, how serious it is, who's responsible, and where they're trying to take the country, and what, if anything, we can do about it. On Guam, I think one of the things we cannot do, we don't have to do, no more white coats for Black Lives Matter. No more virtue signaling and righteousness preening by saying, I support Black Lives Matter. I'm not racist. I'm not racist. Because supporting Black Lives Matter, again, has really little to do with being racist. It has everything to do with critical race theory. Okay, next item on the card. Frenchie really took the cap off this yesterday. Gleeman versus GMH. A gentleman named Robert Gleeman. And I think by now everybody knows what happens. Robert Gleeman was a security guard at GMH. I don't know if he was a government employee or if GMH is subcontracting security. Now, I suspect he's a government employee. And he was aware that someone in the emergency room was at death's door. And he wanted that person was Catholic, and he wanted that person to be given the last rites by a Catholic priest. He called the hospital chaplain, and the chaplain said, well, we're not supposed to go into the emergency room. I'm not going to do it. Gleeman insisted, said, come on, you're a priest. You know what your duties are? And the priest apparently took issue with that, thought that Gleeman was trying to boss him around, wouldn't do it. Gleeman found another priest. Okay, let's take a short break here for our big halftime show, and we'll come back to Gleeman versus GMH.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Hurricane ashore. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Isaias making landfall near Ocean Isle, North Carolina, north of Myrtle Beach.
The storm is continuing to whip in off of the ocean, make its way to the north and northeast. We do have at least 16,000 power outages reported across the Carolinas, and that's likely to go up as the potential for trees coming down and lines coming down increases with the intensity of this storm.
Fox's Rick Leventhal in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. In addition to the high winds and heavy rains, a storm surge of about 5 feet is expected. Flooding reported already in Oak Island, North Carolina. The storm will be tracking northeast through the middle of the week.
We're expecting heavy rainfall to spread northward. It could produce flash flooding all the way up into the northeast United States over the next day or so.
That's meteorologist Daniel Brown at the National Hurricane Center. Now ashore, the storm has begun to weaken. Maximum sustained winds reported at 75 miles an hour and likely to be downgraded soon to tropical storm status. Talks resumed Monday and will continue today between congressional leaders and the Trump administration on another coronavirus economic stimulus package.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calling those discussions productive, but saying differences persist. Fox has learned Pelosi has told fellow Democrats that she's doubtful a coronavirus relief package could be moved this week, even if a deal were struck. And South Carolina GOP Senator Lindsey Graham tells Fox's Shannon Bream.
The Democrats have gone nuts when it comes to Trump. They believe this stimulus package would help the president. Therefore, they're not going to negotiate.
Meanwhile, President Trump is considering taking his own executive actions to quell the economic impact of COVID-19.
Fox's Sean Lanchel. Wall Street beginning the new month up. Asian markets closing Tuesday higher as well. Dow futures are trading more than 30 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
We have lunch selections starting at $9. Choose from a variety of mouth-watering entrees like our old-timer with cheese, ranchero chicken tacos, or the half-rack baby back ribs. All lunch selections are served with a refreshing bottomless Coca-Cola beverage. Experience the bold flavors at a great price with Chili's lunch selections starting at $9. Available Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Located in the Two Sands Plaza, second floor. Chili's, savor the moment.
A police officer shot and wounded in an L.A. suburb Monday in a confrontation with an armed suspect in a parking garage.
They negotiated with him for some time to drop the knife and to surrender to them. However, that did not happen. He, at some point, either lunged toward or tried to run through the officers. I'm not sure yet, but he still had the knife in his hand, and an officer-involved shooting occurred.
Lieutenant Derek Alford of the Culver City Police Department says the suspect died from his wounds. The wounded officer was accidentally shot in the leg by a colleague. Cal Fire continues to battle the Apple wildfire in the hills above San Bernardino, California. Last reported at 5% contained, the blaze has scorched about 41 square miles. It's Election Day in Michigan. Several congressional primaries are being held, and voters casting ballots in Arizona as well.
Arizona's Republican Senate primary could prove interesting. Martha McSally was appointed to that seat, and she faces a challenge from businessman Dan McCarthy. If she survives, polling shows the Democrat in the race, astronaut Mark Kelly, is ahead. And former Maricopa County Sheriff 88-year-old Joe Arpaio wants his badge back. Even after he was convicted of criminal contempt a few years ago, he's running against a former chief deputy and a city police officer. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Singer Kanye West continues his campaign for president.
Kanye submitted signatures to appear on the Arkansas ballot this fall as an independent. Representatives of West have submitted over 1,700 signatures with the Secretary of State's office. The office has 10 days to verify Kanye has submitted at least the 1,000 legitimate signatures from registered voters to qualify for the state ballot. West once backed President Trump, but announced last month he'd broken with the president and would launch his own White House bid. West has since submitted paperwork to appear on the ballot in neighboring Oklahoma. His effort to get on New Jersey's ballot is being challenged. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Haggadah and Tucson are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Hafide, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, big halftime show again. The marching band, the cheerleaders. It's a great show, wrapped up with that barrage of cannon fire that the real Joe Cruz and I really have come to enjoy. So that means we're in the second half of Tall Tales this Tuesday afternoon. And I left off with Gleeman versus GMH. And as I mentioned, Frenchie waxed eloquent about this matter yesterday, but I'm going to pick up and cover some of the points. The hospital chaplain wouldn't come. However, Gleeman then asked one of the saintly nurses if she could convince another priest to come. In fact, both nurses and doctors had given their approval of having a priest administer last rites to the dying person. In the end, another priest agreed to come. I made sure that the security office at stage 1, that's where the people, where a place where they stop people before they enter the ER, I made sure that the officer at stage 1 was going to let the priest in, said Gleeman. I escorted the priest into the facility and he administered the last rites. Thanks be to God and Our Lady's intercession. Gleeman allowed the priest into the facility on June 12. On June 18, less than a week later, he was fired from his job without prior warning. I was told that I made a possible HIPAA violation. HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, aimed at protecting patients' personal data. Gleeman's boss explained that it was not clear he had broken the law, given that he didn't do something crazy like take the medical records, patients' medical records, and post them online. Now, here's an interesting quote. Quote, my boss went on to tell me how I was a great employee and I was doing a fantastic job, Gleeman pointed out. Quote, just that I angered the big lady. I don't think that means the center on the GMH basketball team. I angered the big lady, the head administrator who previously denied priest entrance in a similar situation. The local Archdiocese of Agana had contacted the hospital on June 15, lamenting the difficulties to get priests inside to minister to the sick and dying, asking to clarify the hospital's policies. Episcopal Vicar, Father Ron Richards, pointed out that hospital ministry protocols were likely to stay for indefinite time. We've received calls most often from security who insists, quite forcefully, that a priest come to the hospital to administer last rites. On several occasions, these are patients in the emergency room. During a meeting with the hospital, the Archdiocese agreed on May 27 that priests should not enter emergency room. However, we have received numerous calls from security, as well as ER charge nurse, the nursing supervisor, as well as family members for a priest. With each of these occasions, we have called to confirm if a priest will be allowed in the ER based on your policy. Each time we're told that because it was only for a short period of time, it would be okay for a priest to come in. So we've sent a priest each time. Richards explained that the Archdiocese always referred to hospital policy when receiving calls, but it is the hospital staff that is modifying the policy. Therefore, we are at a loss to how to respond. We are merely trying to work harmoniously with your administration and what is best for all concerned. So, what we have then is we got Systemen Gobyetno Kanilak, apparently, right? The Dunkula na Palawan, the big lady. Yeah. But we have a really interesting conflict of values here. We've got this guy, Gleeman, Robert Gleeman, who is obviously a devoted Catholic, understands the sacraments, understands how important it is to Catholics to have the last rites administered before a person passes away. And then we have the bureaucracy of the hospital. Well, let's just kind of think through this for a minute. Let's assume that the hospital is right, that their rule is correct, and that people should not be allowed into the emergency room whether they're priests or not. And let's assume that Robert Gleeman has studied his faith and understands that, and I just looked this up myself, that not having a priest available to give the last rites could make the big difference for the soul of the decedent as to what the ultimate destination is. So it looks like what Gleeman did is he said, I know what the rules are, but I know what the faith demands. And I'm going to see to it that a priest comes in and administers the last rites. He did, and it cost him his job. I think there's a word that one could use to describe Robert Gleeman. It begins with M. Can you think of it, real Joe Cruz?
Martian?
Close.
Martyr.
Martyr. Yeah, classic definition of a martyr. That he adhered to the tenets of his faith at great cost to himself. He did what he thought was the right thing, even though it cost him to do it. So, in recognition of his martyrdom, at least as far as we know the facts, this is what the Archdiocese of Agana has done. This is their pronouncement on this matter now. Now that it's hit the Remnant and the Catholic News Service and LifeSite Today, now that it's gotten international press, this has been the position of the Archdiocese since that time. Are you ready, real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
You got your Janela button handy? Nothing. Not a thing. Not a thing. So, there we go. I think we ought to give Gleeman a round of applause, real Joe Cruz. And it is possible to make a contribution to him at a website called Fundy, Fundy. A really, really sad story. I would not be the one to tell the hospital how to conduct their affairs at the emergency room or the intensive care ward or wherever. I don't think it's appropriate for me to do that. I do think it's appropriate, though, for me to indicate what I would like to see. And I would like to see the church take out the Constitution, especially, I would like to see the Guam Memorial Hospital, which is the government, by the way. It's a governmental hospital. And I would like them to review the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says, among other things, Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. So, there are a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, etc. And it's not a clear-cut situation. But it would seem to me that the hospital ought to use extreme creativity to try to figure out a way to accomplish the free exercise of religion when people are in extremis. It's something I certainly would like to see. I wonder, Keith, what would you like to see?
I would like to see the person who is in charge of the hospital named and shamed.
Okay.
And her name, put out there, and this story put out there to show the people exactly what type of people we're dealing with. Is she an appointee of the current governor?
In effect, she's chosen by the board of directors, board of trustees of the hospital. But in effect, the governor gets the person that they want, and her name is Lillian Paris Posadas, a nurse.
Okay, well, that explains a lot. Anyway, that was just one of a couple things I wanted to sort of briefly chat with you about.
Okay.
The other goes back to the beginning of the program. You were talking about the the Daily News's op-ed today, or what? No, sorry, it was the Post, about getting a memorial to the Bill of Rights.
That was the Daily News, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Daily News. I was right first time. I'm from the Philadelphia area, and so I'm sort of steeped in colonial history. And my sister sent me an article 2 years ago that the building that the Bill of Rights was written in, which was still standing, was almost torn down 2 years ago. It was on the National Historic Register, or rather it was deemed qualified to be on the register, but no one actually followed through with it. So when a developer came through and wanted to build the ubiquitous parking lot / strip mall, started tearing the building and got halfway through before they figured out what the building was. And so it's apparently they stopped the demolition, and they're in the process of refurbishing it and reconstruct it. I suggest if you're going to put a memorial to the Bill of Rights, why not put it there?
Good idea.
Last item is, concerning the BLM. I've encountered far too many people who, one could use the word naive, I suppose, or uninformed, or what have you, but continue to go through this notion, or believe in this notion, that the BLM is a civil rights organization. And, I have little doubt that most of this audience is smarter than that. But, for those that might not know, BLM does not hide its politics. If you go on to Black Lives Matter website and, look up their objectives, their goals, they'll tell you.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot in there about black civil rights. It's mostly Marxist politics. And, if anyone has relatives, friends, or whatever who continue to believe in this myth of BLM as a civil rights organization, I strongly suggest you visit the BLM website, go to their list of goals and objectives, which is right there, print it out, and distribute it.
You're absolutely right,
Let people know what this mob is up to.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I keep coming back to this ridiculous demonstration by doctors and nurses down in Skinner Plaza, white coats for Black Lives Matter. I'll be charitable and chalk it up to naivete, but it kind of doesn't matter. It's going to work anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, more people are finding out, if you read the online scribes of various websites, that I do. I'm a little bit of a news junkie. More and more people are figuring out exactly what BLM is. And so it's a start. But we really do need to keep spreading the word. And, hey, if that's the way the country wants to go, that's great. But I don't think a whole lot of people really realize what this mob is all about.
Agreed.
So anyway, have a nice afternoon.
Well, I'm glad you called, Keith. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. You too.
All righty. Okay, so leaving Robert Gleeman versus the hospital, just from what I've seen here, I would think that there's a possibility, if probably too late, but it may be a wrongful termination. Had someone picked it up in June, but I really wish the church would speak out on this when we have a real martyr in our midst, at least for what I recognize as a martyr in our midst, and we don't do anything at all. The church doesn't even recognize that he's a martyr. It seemed, and I mentioned this yesterday, that the archdiocese is much more interested in playing the government game than it is in advancing the interests of the faithful. I use the example of Commissar DeNorcy coming along and telling the liturgical committee, no, you can't have a sacramental service. She has the ability to say social distancing, wear a mask, only 50 people, but government can't come along and say you can't have a sacramental service. And I would have hoped that the Archdiocese would have taken a very aggressive posture before that, but certainly at that point. But it seems like the Archdiocese is more interested in keeping a low profile, not stirring up the waters, etc. That's not what the religion is about. That's at least, I'm not in a position, perhaps I shouldn't say that, but it's not what I'm looking for. It's not what I want to see from the Catholic Church. Okay, so much for Gleeman versus GMH. Next item on the card is Lebowski versus the Seventh-day Adventist Clinic. And this is a case where there aren't large numbers of people involved. So if this is a matter of breadth of feeling, there is not a great breadth of feeling dealing with this issue. But there is tremendous depth of feeling. And this is what the issue is. We have something called the Medical Malpractice Mandatory Arbitration Act, 3 M's and 2 A's, triple M, double A, Mandatory Malpractice Mandatory Arbitration Act. And what it says is that if a citizen wants to sue a doctor, a nurse, a dentist, a hospital, a clinic, whatever, for anything that is deals with medical or dental care, before he is let in the courthouse, he must undergo the mechanics of the 3M 2A. And it's very expensive. It's about a $60,000 package. And what the arbitration amounts to is that you have to hire the American Arbitration Association out of Honolulu. It's like a $4,000 unrefundable filing fee that you can't even start without ponying up $4,000. And the way arbitration works is the doctor picks his arbitrator, the plaintiff picks his arbitrator, and those two pick a third one. Now, we probably all know a little bit more about arbitration than we wanted to because of the YTK matter at the port, which really showed arbitration in its worst light. So the arbitrators then call witnesses, examine documents, etc., and rule. And once they've ruled, the plaintiff can ask the courts to enforce the Arbitration Act. The court can sustain the arbitration and enforce it, void it, modify it, etc. In effect, the lawsuit actually begins when the arbitration is over. So it costs you about $60,000 to get in the front door of the courthouse is what it boils down to. So this gentleman, Lebowski, what's his first name here? I had his first name, and give me a second here. I don't know what Mr. Lebowski's first name is. His son's name is Asher Lebowski. Asher died when he was 5 years old. And there were a lot of news stories about the death of Asher Lebowski. His father thought it was at least negligence on the part of the medical people that attended to him and really wanted to file suit, but he ran into this medical malpractice law. He challenged the medical malpractice law in Superior Court, and the Superior Court ruled against him. Mr. Lebowski challenged the constitutionality of the Medical Malpractice Act. I think we've got to get out our Law and Order notebooks here, Real Joe Cruz. So this is a little bit complicated, and it might tell you, I might be telling you more about the Medical Malpractice Act than you wanted to know, but it's pretty valuable information. So Lebowski's case was that there was a denial of equal protection and due process, his right to equal protection and due process, because in effect, he did not have access to the courts. So from there, we go to two terms, fundamental right, strict scrutiny, and strict scrutiny and substantial state interest. And if a statute impacts a fundamental right, it would require strict scrutiny on the part of the examining court to determine whether or not the statute passes constitutional muster. So Judge Barcenas ruled that the constitutionality of the 3MAA actually requires strict scrutiny, which, you would have thought that means a victory for Lebowski. But then he went on to say that the Supreme Court had held in an earlier case that statutes are presumed to be constitutional unless there is a basis to determine that they are unconstitutional. And Judge Barcenas said that based on the evidence before him, on the papers before him, he could not determine that although he was using strict scrutiny to examine the statute, he could not determine whether or not the 3MAA was the least restrictive means to achieve a legitimate government purpose. And therefore, he ruled against Lebowski, and the case will be remanded to the Superior Court. As you were stayed until the arbitration is completed. Let's go to the seventh inning stretch, and then I'll come back to the Superior Court.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
$5 footlong, pile high with veggies.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago. And we go from the center field bleachers of Wrigley Field straight to the Superior Court of Guam. So Judge Barcenas stayed the trial pending the completion of arbitration, which I suspect is not going to happen. And it's unfortunate because it's very difficult for plaintiffs in these kinds of cases to get the case in the kind of posture where they can really address some of the constitutional arguments. Because if Barcenas said that he couldn't rule based on what had been presented to him and he'd remanded, then the plaintiff would get another shot at it. But that's not happening. The case has got to go to arbitration, which means that by the time arbitration's over, it's too late to raise these other issues. Now, there is another case that was filed in the District Court of Guam. Different parties, but same issue. And looking for declaratory relief that the triple MAA is unconstitutional. That might be a more favorable procedural challenge for a plaintiff to proceed on, but we'll have to see. Now, let's just stop and examine for a moment the policy aspects of the triple MAA. The stated policy of the triple MAA is that it protects doctors from medical malpractice suits. If that protection weren't here, medical malpractice insurance would be so expensive that it would be very hard to recruit doctors, that our island would not have a sufficient number of doctors to perform the necessary medical service on the island. So that the legitimate state purpose that is advanced is that because of that triple M, there's a better chance that there'd be an adequate supply of doctors on the island. Without it, with the specter of medical malpractice suits hanging over us, it'd be hard to get doctors, and no one has furnished figures on this, but medical malpractice insurance would be very expensive. So that's the question that's posed. And I'm going to have to admit that there's a lot here to chew on. One, you know, the tragedy of a 5-year-old dying. If the 5-year-old died because he didn't get adequate medical care because it was medical malpractice, if we didn't have the triple M in place, would Asher Lebowski have had better care than what he got? And I don't think you can make that argument. The absence of the triple M would not improve the quality of medical care. I don't think. Now, the argument is, well, if doctors knew they could be sued, they'd be more careful. I don't think a doctor can be more careful than a doctor being careful. Yeah, I in my short 81, I've been to a lot of doctors for a lot of, in fact, I just went yesterday for that plastic surgery, trying to improve my looks, and the doctor just said, nah, forget it, Bob, you're hopeless. Of course, we knew that, but anyhow, the fact that a doctor could be sued, I don't think is going to make him exercise any greater care than he would otherwise. That's just the way doctors are. But you take the other argument, it might be harder to get doctors to come to Guam. So what we're talking about is if it can be shown that a doctor the doctor's practice did not conform with community standards under the same circumstances, then the doctor is going to have to pony up big bucks, or the doctor's insurers. So my basic inclination is to say probably we better stick with the triple MAA. However, I really feel bad, you know, for those who have to, and as Judge Barcina said, we're saddling a very small portion of the island with the social cost of bringing doctors to the island. So I feel pretty bad for Mr. Lebowski and some of these other people that are caught in this situation, but if we didn't have the triple MAA, would the standard of medical care be improved? That, to me, is the really important question. Okay, I think I've got Dr. French on the line, right? Yeah. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Dr. French, yeah. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing great.
You know, regarding cosmetic surgery, your doctor should have told you what the cosmetic surgeon told Nancy Pelosi after her fifth operation. They said, you know, I can no longer help you. You have to go see a remodeling company.
There you go.
You know. So regarding the Lehman story, before I go into what I wanted to talk about, there is basically two stories. There is the story about Lehman being discriminated for his religious views by the hospital. But the other story, I think, which the Chancery didn't tell the truth, which is not new for us because we had several chancellors like that were twisting the truth a little bit, was that after Father Mike refused to give the last rite, another priest came in, and then they followed the protocol that was agreed upon in late May. You know, actually the chancellor is talking about the May protocol, and they went around, and it was negotiated by the liturgical council, and it is that if somebody is in emergency room because it's a special place, it's not like somebody was operated and then sent to a room. It's a place where a lot of people come in. There is a lot of cross-contamination problems and things. That if people want to have the thing, they need to tell the hospital, and the hospital will provide a private room for the family and the priest to give last rite to the patient. And I think the chancellor is kind of covering up for his priests not doing their job. That's my take. I'm not going to say anything more about that. So what I wanted to talk about is a little bit what you did on your first card, which was that article about the proto-Marxist and all those people with identity politics. It's very interesting. I just finished reading a book called The Renaissance of the West by a French author called Philippe Erlin, and he made some very good points, you know, which is that in the 18th century we saw two revolutions which changed the world. One was 1776 and the other one was 1789. Now they both had a different approach, but basically they were replacing natural law, which had been ruling the West for almost 17 centuries, and replacing it by progress and the science as a panacea. And the natural law, basically, it's the law of good versus evil, and it is deeply rooted in both the Greek philosophy and biblical approach. And you know, at times there's been a hard-fought conflict between the two ways of thoughts, but basically this is what we have as a society. We have the remnants of a Hellenic Christian civilization, which is based on good versus evil, and all of the values of society were based on that. And basically we're asking an honest man, and I'm not talking about women, an honest man to defend natural law, versus what happened is that the conservatives, after those two revolutions, decided to change. Instead of continuing to defend the natural law, they started defending what was called by Hegel, the German philosopher, historism, which is a view of history or a defense of tradition. And every time conservatives use that approach of history, which is very subjective in a way, and traditions, and try to put it against progress and science, they lose. And so his argument is that you need to go back to the natural law, which basically founded all our civilization, and in order to be able to fight this fight that we are seeing. And is explaining very well, for example, that rather than the Frankfurt School, what really started this situation we're in now, which is kind of coming to an end, where we're going to have to fight for decisions about what the world is going to be looking like, at least in the Western world, is going back to the German philosopher Martin Heidegger. Now, many people know him, but a lot of people don't know about Martin Heidegger, even though he is probably the most influential philosopher of the last part of the 20th century. He died in, let me see, I don't want to say any stupid thing. I think he died in 1984 or 1974. I forgot. But he was a very controversial philosopher, but also because he was also a former Nazi, and there was controversy about how much was he involved with the Nazi parties and everything. But he put in his philosophy the opposition of the concept of what's his name, René Descartes, which is the the cogito ergo sum, the rationalism approach to life, and Descartes was a 17th century citizen. He opposed that to his own concept of Dasein, which in German means being in the world. And it inspired a lot of very prominent philosophers of the 60s and 70s, in particular Foucault and Lacan, who were the darling of the universities in the 1970s with their deconstruction theories, right? And also the adepts like Jean-Paul Sartre, who was a Marxist, who was all about existentialism. And what he was saying is that ultimately, and it's interesting because Heidelberg wrote a lot, and he didn't publish everything. And actually, in his will, he put a timing, a calendar of well-kept calendar on what book could appear at what time. And actually, what is coming out right now is very profound anti-Semitism, and is basically advocating of a final fight in the Western countries where we will see a full expression of nihilism, where forces of identity politics, which are basically the sense-driven emotion that are brought in by the existentialist Marxist view of the world, and is replacing the Descartes rationalism by a politic of sense, an idea of I can do anything I'm sensing I should do. And it's basically the maximum thing is identity politics. And if you push it to the ultimate version of it, it's nihilism. And this is the woke crowds are basically that we see right now in the U.S. and in Europe are new versions of the Little Red Guard, of the Cultural Revolution. They are not interested in any debate. They know what they want. They don't want to hear about what you have to say, and they want to impose by physical violence their point of view, and this is what BLM is all about. So it's very interesting how this approach is this approach of understanding what is going on there is very important, and his solution of advocating for natural law, which is basically the reimportation of religion and spiritualism into our lives, and the notion of good versus evil, which is a very difficult thing to do because sometimes it is a hard-won debate to define what is good and what is evil. It's not easy, but it says, but being lazy and refusing to define what is evil. And we see it every day in our lives, like we saw it with this Lehman case and other ones. And you can see where it's a very good analysis. It's very interesting. And it's a very interesting recommendation on how to reclaim, if you wish, our civilization, our way of life, and our values.
Well,
so that's what
very good, Frenchie, and I think you can count on Tall Tales to continue to encourage the good and discourage the evil. And the classic example, the woman's right to choose. That's good, right?
No, it's very evil because it's a fake argument.
Yeah, but I mean,
to advance evil. Yeah.
There are those who would say, well, that's a good thing, and others would say killing babies, mothers killing their babies in the womb is a bad thing, and that's kind of where we are.
That's exactly where we are. But the thing is that the confrontation would either lead us to full redemption in the religious sense of it, or the disappearance of our society.
Thanks a lot for calling, Frenchie. Very thought-provoking, as usual.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're coming down the home stretch, and I'm going to leave Churchill Downs and go to the nearest Wendy's, and I think I can catch drive-through Jack picking up his dinner or supper at the nearest
5,
Wendy's.
4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, home stretch. I got about 9 more minutes to go until we play that Real Joe Cruz's favorite song. So I leave Churchill Downs, and I'm driving down the street, and I see Wendy's with a drive-through, and I pull into the drive-through, and guess who's in that It's drive-through Jack. Hi, Jack.
Hi, good afternoon, Bob. How are you doing? Yes, I'm caught in traffic. I'm like, I'd say 7 or 8 deep behind on Marine Corps Drive heading north, and I'm not near Wendy's. So actually, I'll be picking up pizza through the drive-thru, through Domino's drive-thru.
Well, the Domino's drive-thru, this is one of the highlights of our program here, Jack. A lot of people tune in just to find out what Jack is going to pick up in the drive-thru at the end of the program.
The lines determine the decision. I think that's the new normal now.
Okay.
So the line's long. Yeah, it's out of the question. But anyways, I called because it's about this Gleeman incident. So, I agree with everything that you said so far. The only problem is that, I remember Frenchie mentioning that it was on Jungle Watch website, and I saw it the other night. But just to make sure, because I was going to donate to the fund thing, I went to go check check on it again, and it's gone. And I tried to access all the local news sites to see if they had anything on it, and there's nothing posted in any of the news sites locally, whether it's the Guam PDN, the Post, KUM News, Candid News, PNC. There's nothing posted about this incident. And so, I tried going on the web. I don't have a Facebook account. I deactivated it years ago. Either his Facebook has gone private because nothing's coming up on the Google search. So I'm just wondering what's going on. And I went to the Fundly page, and the location says Fremont, California. And I said, wait a second, this guy's here in Guam, and I know he's asking money to relocate. So it reminds me of a while back when the news broke about the abortion doctor, the search of, and how none of that stuff made it into the local news until, about a week later?
Right.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, is this the same incident? Because I can't find it anywhere, and I went to Jungle Watch before I left work, and even the story that was on Jungle Watch is removed. Can you give me some info? What news outlet here locally is tracking the news?
I don't think any of the local news outlets is covering it, Jack. And that's an indictment of them, isn't it?
It is, but it's also a poor I mean, now what news are we supposed to trust here? It's just difficult when these sorts of things that happen that are newsworthy aren't covered. And we mentioned about the abortion doctor search, never even dropped locally. I mean, it posted in some of the blogs and stuff like that. And I am a subscriber to Life News. But, like I said, I mean, at least our local news should have something on this story, or even, waiting for comment, or no comments have been posted by Mr. Gleeman. I just don't get it. Why these things aren't really covered with fine tooth comb? Because I know religion, especially Catholic positions, are being bombarded, and I know in the Life News site it sheds our priests in a bad light, our local priests, for refusing to go give last rites. And now, especially at this time, we need our faith, and to find out that we have to dot I's and cross T's and fill out forms to get sacraments. I mean, this doesn't make sense much, Bob, and I just wanted to know what your take on this is. I mean, the lack of local media on this guy losing his job.
Well, if I were the editor of a newspaper, I would see all of the elements of a really interesting story here. There's the human interest angle, the little guy against the big institution, the little guy who is following the dictates of his faith, the big institution that's enforcing its rules. Lots of good interviews with Gleeman, with Lillian Posadas, Paris Posadas, with anybody at the Chancery who would answer the phone. And I would think this would make a really good news story.
Not only that, it's an issue that you could ask to, because we have an election season, that could be a core value issue to ask anyone running for office here locally. What do you think about this person being fired for his job? What do you think about the administration in search of an abortion doctor rather than trying to get an ME, medical examiner? What are your position on it? It just baffles me, and it takes me. Years ago when you were on the other station, there was an incident in which there was an incident in which a lady was, I think, killed, and she was pregnant. And there was another incident in which a baby was found out here in Dedido. And one of the news outlets had the balls, the cojones, to run that the abandoned baby is a companion piece to Guam's search for an abortion.
I remember that. I tore into that one on Tall Tales. Yeah.
So this is the media that we have now here, and it's just what else are you supposed to do? But I'm also kind of curious why on Jungle Watch, Tim Rohr, that was like the top of his headline when you go to his page, and it's not there anymore. So I don't know if he knows something or
well, I just brought up Jungle Watch, and this is what it says. More to the story. Jungle Watch has decided to take down the last 2 posts about the issue of GMH. Hope to have an update soon.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that message. I just got his previous back in July 5th. So I was just wondering why it was taking that. So those are the simple questions that I had. Number one is the Funnily Put page was located out of Fremont, California, and that just gave me red alerts right there. And I couldn't access his Facebook page, but I'm not a member of Facebook, so he might have gone private. And the money is for relocation, which I'm all for. If he needs to go, he needs to go.
Yeah.
He needs to find a place that's safe. So, anyways, thanks, Bob.
Okay, enjoy your pizza, Jack. So long. Okay, and all you folks out there in our international radio listening audience, if you're eating pizza, enjoy your pizza. I hope you're not stuck in a drive-thru somewhere like Jack is. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.